Once upon a time, we, the people of the United States, spent $486 million to buy Afghanistan a fleet of new planes. Planes that the Afghan Air Force could not fly and could not maintain. And so we bought them those planes, and then they got dumped in a field full of weeds, and then they sat there for years, and they were eventually turned into scrap in a process much like the one we're watching right here. That scrap sold for 6 cents a pound. $486 million into $32,000 worth of scrap metal. That's a loss of 99.93% on the investment if you're counting at home. Here's another one you might remember from a couple of weeks ago. It's the amazing melting Afghan police training center. We paid $500,000 to build that training center, but apparently it was not built to withstand rain. So when it rained on the training center melted. These are just 2 examples of really bad management and oversight of the billions and billions and billions of dollars that U.S. taxpayers have poured into Afghanistan over the course of the longest war in our history. And we would have never known about either of those examples had it not been for this guy. His name's John Sopko. He's the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction. He's tasked by the U.S. government with asking questions like, hey, whatever happened to those planes we paid $486 million for? And hey, why is this $500,000 police training center melting in the rain? And so that's his remit. He puts out these quarterly reports. Here's how much we're spending in Afghanistan. Here's what we're spending it on. Here's what we're actually getting for that money. But there's something different about his latest report, which officially comes out tomorrow. After 25 consecutive quarterly reports in which the Inspector General has laid out in detail the data about the U.S. mission in Afghanistan, right? Training the Afghan National Security Forces, how many soldiers and police the U.S. and its coalition partners have trained, how much it's cost, how well those forces are performing. After 25 of those reports, in this report, this 26th report, all that data is suddenly classified. The Inspector General calls this amount of classification, quote, unprecedented. He says for the first time in 6 years, he's, quote, unable to publicly report on most of the U.S. taxpayer-funded efforts to build, train, equip, and sustain Afghan forces. That's pretty much the U.S. mission in Afghanistan. But because this Inspector General is a little saucy, his latest report, the one where everything's classified all of a sudden, this latest report from him does also contain something new that he's never done before. For the first time, he's included an appendix that lists every single question his office asked about the U.S. mission in Afghanistan. Every question they asked for which the answer was, no, we can't tell you, I'm sorry, that's classified. How many Afghan soldiers are there? Classified. What has the U.S. spent on those soldiers? Classified. How much did the U.S. spend on food for the Afghan army? Classified. Could you give us the definitions of the terms unavailable or present for duty? No, sorry, that's classified. At one point, the coalition reportedly tried to classify the number of American troops in Afghanistan. That's a number that has been publicly announced by President Obama. In a memo to the Inspector General, the commander of coalition forces in Afghanistan said this: while I cannot comment upon the precise reason why certain information was considered unclassified in the past, we must be careful to avoid providing sensitive information to those that threaten our forces and Afghan forces. Quote, I'm committed to maximum transparency in our operations, but you're not allowed to know what any of them are. Now, all this new unprecedented classification relates to the training and equipping of Afghan forces. We've got billions of other dollars in non-classified government and development projects. But building up the Afghan security forces, that really is the American mission in that country now. When they say the war is ending, but we still have all those troops there, it's because that's what our troops are doing there. That's why we were able to draw down our troop levels somewhat, right? Because we were told that the remaining troops were there to train the Afghan army to take American troops' place. And the 9,500, give or take, American soldiers who are still in Afghanistan, along with thousands of American contractors, they are there to support the training of Afghan forces. And everything about Afghan forces is now classified. And just today, in a horrible reminder of just how dangerous the mission remains for all the Americans who are still there, today, 3 American contractors and 1 Afghan national were killed at the Kabul airport. An Afghan security official tells NBC the 3 Americans were instructors who were shot dead by an Afghan soldier. Classifying all this information will make it difficult to report on what's happening in Afghanistan. All of us will know much less about what our government is doing, how much it's spending, and what it's getting for its money. But classifying all that information will not make Afghanistan and the thousands of American troops and contractors working there, it won't make them go away. It won't make their job any easier. It will just make us know less about what they're doing and whether it's working and how long they should stay. Joining us now for the interview tonight is Senator Claire McCaskill of Missouri. She's a member of the Armed Services Committee. She's former chair of the Subcommittee on Contracting Oversight, and she endures me talking about her in an embarrassing way without ever getting mad at me about it. Senator McCaskill, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Rachel.
Do you have any insight, especially given your position on the Armed Services Committee, into why all of this previously public information all of a sudden is classified now?
Well, it's important to remember why we have a special inspector general. We put this in the statute because the public needs to hold the government accountable about the way they spend money during war. We saw in Iraq tens upon billions of dollars wasted, fraud, corruption. And what we've tried to do by putting Sopko in there, he's a great inspector general. The one before him, by the way, was incompetent, that I called for his firing and got it. You know, if we can't find this information out, if the public can't know it, then we cannot hold our government accountable about what they're doing in wartime and how effective it is. So this is really a big deal. I'm hot about it. I'm going to get to the bottom of it.
So, but there's been this change, and the thing that is very worrying to me politically about this change is that the change where we're not allowed to know anything about Afghan security forces is happening at the exact time that the U.S. combat mission has ended, and the whole U.S. mission there has become the Afghan security forces. What I'm worried about is that this is an effort basically to disappear American information about our ongoing efforts, ongoing dangerous warlike efforts there. So it really seems like we're not in a war, even though 10,000 American troops are still there.
And look what happened in Iraq. You know, the ability of the armies that we had built up and tried to sustain and train, they crumbled under bad political leadership in Maliki, and ISIS ran over a great deal of that country with some pretty severe consequences. We need to keep track of whether or not the ongoing mission in Afghanistan is working. What is the force? What are their capabilities? What is the attrition rate? Now, there may be some details that should be classified about location and various components, but the notion that General Campbell in one fell swoop has said everything is now a secret is just unacceptable.
Do you think that this could potentially be an issue when the very important confirmation hearings come up for the new defense secretary? Ash Carter is due to come up. Everybody thinks he's going to sail through his confirmation proceedings, but is that going to be an occasion where this might become an issue?
I will absolutely ask the question. Why is this classified? I will expect him to have answers. And by the way, Ash Carter is somebody who's had a lot of experience in acquisitions. He understands the financial side of the military and the problems associated with that. I've worked with him on wartime contracting issues in the past. So he gets this. He gets why this is important. And I'm going to expect him to have some answers. And frankly, I'm going to expect General Campbell to have answers also.
One of the things that the president called for at the State of the Union address that the Republicans did not seem too opposed to, although certainly the devil's in the details, is this idea that there ought to be at least a debate and hopefully a vote on an authorization for the use of military force around what's going on right now in Iraq and Syria. The current authorization for that force dates back to 9/11 and to seemingly unrelated events described in those very early, more than a decade old pieces of legislation. When that debate happens, do you think that that's going to be an occasion to be talking about some of these bigger picture issues about how force is used? I mean, 10,000 Americans in Afghanistan for another decade, a seemingly rapidly expanding remit in Iraq. Do you think there's going to be a broad debate about how we're using force if and when that finally happens?
I think so. I think both force and intelligence. And, you know, the notion that we have an ongoing war that may be never ending because of the nature of terrorism and the global presence of it. But the bottom line is we need to get at this use of force agreement. It's hard. It's going to be very difficult in this environment with a Congress that seems more attracted to the idea of politically punching the president than really getting things done. But we ought to do this, and I hope, I think Senator Corker is serious about it and has good faith behind his effort. So I'm hoping that we can begin to work on it and hammer out language that would not be so open-ended for as far as the eye can see.
Last question for you, Senator. Feel free to dodge it. I know you are completely committed to Hillary Clinton and her run for the presidency in 2016. If for some reason she decides not to run, would you consider running?
You know, I doubt it. I'm proud to be a Democrat, and I'm not ashamed to be a moderate. And I do think it's important for all the Democrats to remember that it's very hard for us to be a majority. It's very hard for us to hold the presidency if we don't understand that independent voters in the middle aren't really interested in parties. They want us to compromise and get along.
Senator Claire McCaskill of Missouri, elegant dodge. Part of the reason I think you would win if you ran. You're way, way, way more conservative than I am, and I say that as an endorsement,
Yeah,
so the
some of your
country can feel
listeners are going to
comfortable.
be screaming at you, Rachel.
I know, I love it. I love it. You get screamed at equally from all sides. It's part of what makes you the perfect candidate, Senator.
I do get screamed at a lot.
That's
true.
Right. In stereo. Senator Claire McCaskill, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks,
All right.
Rachel.
All right, just ahead, more of this. Stay with us.